Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for being here and joining us today. We're going to go over the trade ideas for Lightspeed platform. We're going to cover three different topics that we didn't cover in our last webinar. We're going to focus initially on strategy development. So I'm going to go through my desktop right here. I'm going to show you how these strategies are configured, explain how we use the filter and alert combination for the alert windows, and how we use the filters and sorting for the topless windows. As just a little bit of review, trade ideas, we scan every single tick of every stock in the market. That allows us to keep statistical baselines on all normal activity for every stock out there on all the different time frames. So at any given time, we can see abnormal or unusual behavior and deliver that information right to your desktop. So that's the genesis of trade ideas. We're like your trading assistant. So we're looking at everything in the market so you don't have to, and only when these interesting events occur, we'll deliver that to you. To bring it full circle with Lightspeed, what we've done is we give you the ability to set up these alerts and topless data. We also give you the ability to back test it, to take a look and see if you were to hypothetically purchase or short sell an occurrence of an alert every time it occurred, how would that strategy perform in the market? So we give you the ability to do some event-based back testing, and I'll show you that. And then finally, we close the loop off with the automated trading. So signals that are generated inside of your Trade Ideas platform then can get automated through your Lightspeed platform. And Jamie will really focus on that aspect of it towards the end of the presentation. And then we'll take some questions at the end. So that is our agenda. And let me just get started here with my desktop. And these are some different windows that I put together. The first thing you should notice is the icon in the upper left of every window. That's going to denote whether or what type of window this is, rather. So if it's a T up there, it's going to be a topless window. So that's a snapshot. It's a real-time snapshot of data that updates every 30 seconds and giving you a list of stocks that meet your filtered criteria. We then give you the ability to sort on that inside of the client and then put your own special color sorting on that. So that's the T, that's the topless window. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some alert configurations. And this is the type of strategy development that we do that works with the Oddsmaker. So for an alert window, you need an event to occur. That event will send the signal to the top of your window. And if you choose to automate that signal, you can do so. And those are the two different types. We have another window type called the multi-strategy window. I'm not going to talk about it today, but effectively it just lets you take multiple alert windows with their own individual configurations and put them into a single window container, really saving on screen real estate. Let's drill right into this upper window right here, and I'll maximize it a little bit so that you can see what we're focusing on. This window right here is a top list window, and it is basically looking for a stock that's been range bound, and this is looking at a longer time frame on a daily chart. So a stock that's been range bound for a bit and now is breaking above its upper daily Bollinger Band. So let me bring it up on a chart to illustrate it so we can see exactly what's happening. We'll look to the daily chart down at the bottom here. And at the Bollinger Band is here. We also have a requirement in here to have that Bollinger Band somewhat narrowing. So as I go through some of these, you should see a very similar type of pattern setup. And then we'll dive into the window and show you how it's configured and how you can do something like this yourself. So just cycle through the list, and you can see once you have a configuration set up, you're really going to get the same type of patterns coming through this window. Okay, so now that we can see what we're looking at here, we're looking for this Bollinger breakout on a daily. Let's right-click into the window and select Configure and really dive into this and how you set it up. Now, the top list window doesn't have the Alert tab like the Alert window does. It just has the filters. Okay, and so if I click on the Filter tab and I hide Unused, this is going to give me a visibility into the different filters that are used in this particular strategy. And in this strategy, I'm really just using two filters that have any interest to this particular setup. I'm using my ADX value that's going to have a maximum value of 25. Now, if you don't know what that is, the best way to do it is to come back over to ADX right here on our Search tab. If you select it, you can then hit the Help button down at the bottom, and that's going to spawn a browser page that's going to take you right to the ADX definition. And so if you read it, you can see here that values less than 25 indicate a sideways choppy motion. Values between 30 and 50 typically indicate a strong trend. So we just use that basic filter right there. And if I selected that filter, you'll see that I put a maximum value of 25. So I'm looking for it to be somewhat range bound. And then I'm ensuring that the stock is above its upper Bollinger Band. Now again, sometimes it's a little confusing. You don't know what to put in here. You can go to our help page, or you can go into this little magnifying glass right here where it can give you examples. So if you want to see something that's above the upper Bollinger Band, it tells you what you need to do to configure it. If you want to say it's below the lower Bollinger Band, it tells you you need to put a 0 in the max value. So it's kind of an underutilized feature, but this little magnifying glass gives a lot of different cool things about the software. So if I click on it again, I can go to the histogram. Now the histogram is giving me a full range of the market. So these are all the symbols that are in the market here. And as a maximum value of 25, you can see that I'm cutting it off right here. I can move that up. Now you see we have a maximum value of 58. So this is another way that you can configure your tool, by looking at the breadth of the market and how many different stocks actually make that up. Same thing you can do with the Bollinger Band. You can get the histogram. So now we're looking at stocks that are above their upper Bollinger Band on the daily, and that just accounts for 304 securities out of all of them that are out there on the daily. So it's a good little feature to know that's there. And again, you have the examples. And some of them actually give you a graphical indicator. If you were to look at the moving average filters, it gives you a nice chart example as to how to do that. But I'm going to show you a little bit later how to configure some things that are a little more difficult, negative numbers, but we'll get to that in a bit. So really simple configuration for the upper Bollinger Band. If I wanted to take this window and flip it and turn it into stocks below the lower Bollinger Band, I would just hit the flip button. But I'm not going to do that yet because I already have it configured right here. So let's see. Let's pull up a couple just to make sure that this is what we want. Lower Bollinger Band, it's below it. So they're all giving us the inverse of what we saw up at the top here. Again, right-click, configure, look at my filters. I have a custom filter. I'm not even going to begin to explain that one to you guys right now, but here we're looking for a maximum position in the Bollinger Band value of 0. That means it has to be below 0, so it'll always be below it. Again, we're still looking for sideways action. So really simple to set this type of top list up in this regard. So let's move over to this next window over here, and this is an alert window, indicative by the A up at the top. This is a real underutilized alert, which is why I'm showing it to you today, because it's a real powerful alert. It's our sector divergence alert. Every symbol is tied to a particular sector or ETF. And because, again, we're keeping statistical baselines on everything, we know when something deviates from the norm. So these are all symbols that are deviating from their overall ETF or sector that they trade in. So I don't have too many filters on here, so you're going to get stocks that are pretty thin. If I didn't want to see something like that, you right-click in here, go to search, and if you can see what I have, if I go to strategies, you can see that I'm just looking for sector divergence up and down, but I don't have any filters. So that could give me a lot of garbage like that I see right here. I can't trade that stock, or I don't want to trade it. So in order to get rid of things like that, I'm going to put a volume filter on here. So let's just go to volume. Now I have all my volume filters down below. The alerts are the icons with the white background. Everything with the cyan or magenta is a filter. I could go right into the filtered group just by selecting that category. Now I have all of the filters that have anything to do with volume. And a good way to get rid of this type of stock is to do an average daily volume filter. You can pick any one of these, 5 days, 10 days, or 3 months. Just hit add the filter, and you can put in whatever value you want. And I'll just put in 300,000, and probably will not be getting TDD. I don't know what that volume is, but so now what we can do is we can right-click, go to history. This is a feature that's coming very, very shortly. It's just we're added today and yesterday to the drop down here. So if you just select today, you can then get a list of the symbols that met that criteria today. So had you not been looking at it, you can then go back and see the symbols that would have traded at any point during the day. So it's giving you a real-time indication, snapshot of stocks that are deviating from their overall ETF. Let's come up to this one. This is a pretty interesting strategy. This right here is a swing strategy. And again, these two here over on the left are looking for daily. This is looking for intraday action. This right here is also looking for some daily setup. So before I pull it up on a chart, let's dig into it and see what we're looking at. We're looking for a new high or a new low trigger. So it's got to be a 3-day new low. And if I go to my alerts, I can see that's the only thing I have selected, looking for a 3-day new low. You can hide unused to just see that. Now I can go to my filters. Let's hide unused as well, just to see exactly what we're looking at. So now we're looking at an ADX value minimum of 30. So that's now telling me that we're now getting into a stronger trending type of category. 250,000 minimum average daily volume. Now this filter right here is telling me that the stock needs to be at least at the 20-day SMA, but no more than 2% above it. So it needs to be within that range between 0 and 2% from that 20-day SMA. The position in the 5-day range, it needs to be in the lower half quadrant or the lower half section of that 5-day range. And the position in the 20-day range is just the opposite. It needs to be in the upper section of that 20-day range. So it's it's a pretty simple setup, but you'll see it generates some pretty interesting results. So what we're looking at is we're looking for a move down on a strong trending stock towards their 20-day SMA. So this is kind of alerting you to something that should become on your watch list, maybe for the next day, maybe to start putting on a position today. But remember, this is now looking for something that's moving down. It hasn't based yet, but it is coming in towards its 20-day SMA. And the nice thing is, as you do this, here we have something that's been consolidating but did come down right to that SMA. And hopefully, they should all do something very, very similar to that particular setup. Now, there was one other thing I had in here, at least I thought I did, consecutive days. So this was a filter I didn't discuss, but the consecutive days is telling me that absent of today, yesterday and the day before needed to have been down days. Okay, and so that's a down day the day before. It's not necessarily a down day today, but it's moving down towards that moving average. If I wanted to make sure that it was going to be down today, I would just type in change from the close. I could do dollars or percent. I could add that filter. And if I want to make sure that it's a negative number for today, so it's now effectively going to be down 3 days in a row coming towards that moving average, I'll just make the max value 0 here. So it can't be a positive number. It needs to be negative. That'll give me, really, not much should have changed. I'll probably exclude a few symbols from it. And select today. And there we have it. Now, some of the filters up at the top. So you can see here, I have the icons up at the top, and you may not know what that is. We do have a tooltip. But a feature that we have recently added is text headers. So if you select that, you can now see the text header. You don't need to know the icon name or the icon view. And you can change your view that way. I've got them differentiated here. This is a new feature that should be coming to your Trade Ideas application very, very shortly, and that's this Topless dropdown, which will give you very quick access to the pre-configured strategies that we have, in addition to your recent settings that you've used. So that's a nice little feature that's coming shortly. Let's now talk about this one right here. This is stocks that are above their 200-day SMA. It's just a top list, and I'm sorting it on the distance from the 200-day SMA. So when I talked about the top list over here, I didn't really talk about the sorting, and the sorting is really one of the major components of the top list. So as I right-click on it, I'm going to go to sort, and you're going to see here that the change from the 200-day SMA is going to give me the largest value on top. Let's look at the strategy that we're looking for. I just want to make sure that it's above the 200-day SMA, does 200,000 shares on average a day, and it's above $2. So pretty simple and not too many filters in this particular strategy. But if I pull it up, and I don't think I have a 200-day SMA on here, let's do that. So these guys are all going to be really significant above that 200-day SMA. And if I was to just duplicate this window, right-click configure, go to flip, I'm going to get stocks that are below the 200-day SMA. Not needing to go back in and change the configuration values. It changes my sort order and changes my filters that are applicable. So if I go back into it, you're going to see that all it really changed was it made it so that I had to be below the 200-day SMA. And if you go to my sort, it's now looking for the smallest value on top. So that's kind of how the guts of it works from that regard. A couple more. I'm running a little long on the top list. Just highlight these windows right here, the consecutive up days and down days. I believe these are available. Yeah, these are available in the movers category in the pre-configured strategies. But you can see here, this particular column is our consecutive days. It's colored on change from the close. So this stock right here had been up 8 days in a row, but today it's down, as indicative by the red color that we have. So this guy here is up and has been up 7 days in a row. So just another way to manipulate the data and really see what's going on in the marketplace. And sometimes you just want to look at it, cycle through this list here, take a look at those stocks, and maybe minimize your window and not even come back to it. Okay, so let me see where that leaves us. So let's do, I'm going to pull this up, but I'm not even going to, I'll share this with you after the webinar. I'm going to load it from the cloud. It's just giving you an idea of what we can do at the top list from a symbol list perspective, because as I mentioned, we scan every single stock out there on the New York and NASDAQ and Amex. But let me do this. Let me bring in sector details sorted on relative volume. So this right here is just bringing in 9 different top lists that don't really have any filter sets to it, but what they are doing is they're looking at various sectors. So this particular is finance and insurance, healthcare, metals, and then I have an overall sector analysis up here where I can see the healthcare sector was really the only one that had strength today. Everything else looked pretty weak. So I could drill right into the health. I could drill right into this change from the close and see all the stocks that we're really doing very, very good in this particular sector. So you can drill right into it. And just real briefly, the way to configure it, again, not too many filters in here. I hide unused, you'll see there's just not much going on. But when I get to symbol list, this is where I have the ability to select any number of different symbol lists, either symbol lists that you create yourself or some that we have on the server. And so if you scroll down, you can go into the sectors area, and then you can set up sectors, you can go into subsectors, industries, you can go into sub-industries, so you can get really specific there. Let me close those. I'll put all these into a cloud link and share them with Sean, who will pass them out to you when I hand this over to Jamie. Okay, so now this brings us to the Oddsmakers. So let's talk a little bit about that, the backtesting tool. And I've got a window here on the bottom left. This is a long crossing resistance strategy. So if we go into it, take a quick look. We're not going to dive into all of it because there are a lot of filters in here. Took a little bit of time to create something like this, but I'm just using one alert trigger, crossing above resistance, and then a whole lot of different filters. Might be easier to look at it in the summary area, where you can see what we're looking for. We're doing a lot of things where we're just excluding some real extreme ranges or extreme movement. And some other things really paint the picture as to what's going on with this particular setup. So that's the setup. Let's go ahead and run the Oddsmaker and really just do a hypothetical here. This particular strategy generated these trades during the day. I'm not going to look at these trades in this analysis. I'm going to look at the last 60 days. Right now, your version has 30 days. Over the next couple weeks, it'll be upgraded to double the effective power that you have in the backtesting, moving into 60 or 62 days. So that's really 3 trading months. And let's do this. Let's just go ahead and simulate a buy. I do have time filters in my strategy, so I could theoretically have this wide open to where I'm not really constraining the initiate time, because inside of here we do have a time filter and you can set it up when it's okay for alerts to generate in the window. We're going to hold this for 60 minutes. We're going to put in a $1 protective stop loss, and let's just run it. So now it's basically going back the last 60 days with this strategy and taking a look that if I would have bought every instance, or the first instance rather, of every signal, unique signal, and held it for 60 minutes, or got rid of it with that dollar stop, how would I have done? And so this is going to give me the analysis. And it's a pretty good equity curve. I started with 50,000. I ended with 54. That's net after commissions and slippage. And we can go ahead and hypothesize what that slippage is, what the commission is. But let's look at some of the data and the results that it tells us. So it gives us a profit factor of 1.65. And the profit factor is really the total sum of your winners over the total sum of your losers. So if it was a profit factor of 1, it would be equal winners to losers. So it's good to have a number better than 1, pretty much essential. Total trades, 600 trades for the course of not just March, but February, and I'll probably have January in here as well. So good number of trades, 55% winners. Average winner was 84 cents to 64. I'd like a bigger disparity between that. That's a little close for my taste, but I had a $50,000 account. I could actually do this strategy without a problem with the equity that I have. Buying power required for this strategy was only 75,000. So I could certainly do it. It was feasible. Let's go through some of the views that we have here. Equity curve, again, is giving you your gross after your commission. So if I adjust my commissions here, you can see the equity curve changes. Slippage does the same thing. And slippage is, let's say a signal was generated right here for QIHU at 98.64. Putting a slippage of 4 cents in here says that if I had a market order, maybe I'm willing to pay 98.68. So you're just giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room in getting those prices. So the equity curve, we'll move over to the right here and look at this daily tab. The daily tab is giving us a couple different views. So this is our profit per day or loss, and gives you that bar chart type of view. And then we have the number of trades per day. And so you can see on average, this was probably doing about 8 trades per day. Drawdown, what was your maximum drawdown? Just over 1%, so that's pretty acceptable. And then the buying power, what was required to implement this strategy, only on 3 days did it ever exceed 60,000. If you go over your calendar heat map here, it shows you on the graph over here what day corresponds to that particular event. So you can also then drill into the calendar here. So if I was to just double click on the 21st, now I can see all the trades that I took on the 21st, inclusive of the entry, exit time, the price, exit price, as well as the number of shares. And in this case, because I decided to do it based on a dollar value, the shares are all going to be different. But if I change this to, say, share size 200, I can't implement it, right? There are a couple days where I was probably trading some very expensive stocks and couldn't do it. So let's do something here. Let's look at the optimization side, and let's just start with price, because we can optimize price, time, as well as all the different filters that we have. So starting with price, let's make our increments say $10. Make this a little bigger. So now you can see every $10 is giving me the indication. So between $20 and $30, there were only 2 trades that took place, and it's giving me the profit factor, win percentage, the average gain or loss in that particular group. And you could change the group. So if I wanted to make it $20, I could do that. Now I can see everything on this page here. So this is interesting, because as I look at something like this, something really does stand out to me. And there's a break point right here at $100 where I start to see everything kind of degraded. Nothing really held up. So I'm going from nice, solid win percentages here above 65%, and suddenly I drop to 50. Even though I'm making money, still drop to 50, drop to 40, 50. I don't like that. One, we know there are a lot of trades in there for us to try to do. So maybe I'll put a break point in here. And then as we get down here, it's even worse. So if I come up here, and you can't do this right now in your version, but very, very shortly you will. For you, what you would do is you'd come here and you right-click, go to Configure, change your price, and do it that way. But this feature here, where I'm going to right-click on this value, now I'm going to set my max value of price to 99.9. I'm actually going to change that to 100. So it drops that in there for us. Change it to 100. All right, so now I've made a price change. Let's just go back to the summary view, equity curve, and I'm going to run it again with just that one change. So let's simulate the buy. I'm going to slide this over here. All right, well, that actually looks a lot better. I look at the profit factor went from 165 to 3.2 almost. That's pretty much double. That's a really good change. Now we've only done 231 trades as opposed to 601. My percentage winners went up from 55 to 68. I'd still like to see more here, but that got better. Strategy return definitely improved. Buying power required. See, I could actually implement this strategy here using 200 shares. So that's a good little change that was made, and gives you actually the ability to implement it using a share quantity rather than a dollar value. Then, there's other things as you go into. So first of all, let me explain. With this optimization tab right here, we have this other filters. Now, you populate this drop down here in a couple of different ways. It'll get populated by having columns visible in your strategy when you run the Oddsmaker. But you can see I have a lot more than just those columns right here, these filters. And the reason is that if I was to go to run again, show advanced, I've got this section selected right here. By default, it's set up to use the columns from your strategy. But if you have this selected right here to use your favorites, and you go ahead and set it, what I've done is I've just included all of the filters that we have as my selected columns. So that way, by doing that, now I have this entire drop-down populated with all of the different filters. And this strategy is optimized right now, so let me do this. Let me go into a strategy that's not optimized. Let's take this guy right here, which is swing candidates, and let's run the Oddsmaker on it. Let me close these other windows. Let's run the Oddsmaker. And let's go ahead and just, we can do this for multiple days too. So let's hold this for tomorrow and 3 days. I haven't done this, so I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's just going to give me an opportunity to show you the different filters and how we can adjust that. So that's actually really good. So this strategy right here, where we're looking for a strong trending stock that just happens to be coming into its 20-day moving average, and we're holding it for 3.5 days or so, looks pretty good. Let's go into the optimization section, other filters, and let's just kind of go through the list. So I hit the drop down first, because then what I do is I just use my down arrow key and I kind of cycle through. And the first time I'm just kind of getting a flavor. I'm curious as to, a lot of times I like to do some, I like to exclude the things that are really at the edge of some of these filters and ranges and change from certain time periods. If something's moved too much over a certain time period, I like to exclude that stuff. But before I do any of that, I just kind of look at it. I want to go through the different filters and see, like this one stands out to me, and this is the change over 120 minutes. If something has changed over 3%, and you can change these values here, over 3%, I start to really degrade. So, it's pretty clear here that I don't really need anything above this level right here. So that's the kind of analysis that it gives you. And this really makes sense, too, because when you think about it, 120-minute range, if it gets too big, the volatility has gotten too much, and it's hard to predict at that point. So we'll just kind of move through. And it's really just understanding really the filters and how they work, and putting in a 20-day range, does that make sense to put that kind of filter set into the strategy? And that's when you have to use a little bit of your own trading smarts to figure out what are the best things to manipulate here. So I look at all things. I don't just look at the total here and looking for a negative. I like to see the win percentage, and did I drop off at a certain point? Was something evident below a certain value? And I also, one thing I never like to do is I never come in and see, okay, well, there's one stock here, it's a $616 loss. Why don't we exclude it? That becomes curve fitting, if you will, and I think that if you just grab one-offs, it doesn't make sense. Now, if this was something like, let's say the 5-day range is set between 20 and 30, and there's a huge gap between this guy here and this one, absolutely. Put the filter in there to make sure that you don't have these extreme situations presenting themselves. So, I mean, I spent hours and hours doing this, so it's really hard to kind of do it in a 45-minute webinar. But just simply cycle through it and get an understanding of how these filters affect the different strategy that you're trying to employ here. So that pretty much wraps up the Oddsmaker as I was going to show it today for you. So I think it'd probably be a good time now to just send this over to Jamie, and he can talk a little bit about the Brokerage Plus interface and the way that you can automate these strategies so that you don't need to be at your computer or managing your trades, rather. Now, for me, I like to use this system to get me into it. And depending upon how the market day is going, a lot of times I'll use it as a gray box mentality. So I use the system to get me in, and I'll do a little bit of the managing of that position. But everybody's different. Everybody has different successes. And I'm sure Jamie has a different way to approach it. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jamie Hodge. He's our Director of Education. If you're so fortunate enough to get a training session from him, he's a professional trader, and he's been using trade ideas since the inception. So nobody knows this product like Jamie, except maybe myself. But Jamie, it's all yours, bud.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Let me get my screen activated here. All right, so I believe that I'm showing my screen. Am I coming through over there, Brad? I'll take that as a yes.
Yep.
All right. Okay,
Yeah,
very good. So basically what we have here is the Brokerage Plus interface. And the way, obviously, that you would spawn that would be to go to your Tools section and then spawn the Brokerage Plus interface. And there are videos that show how to get connected and all that good stuff. So if you guys have any questions after the webinar about actually how to get this little guy green, we can direct you to a video that'll show that. So I'm just going to jump right into, let's say you've worked for a couple of hours, you've produced a very good statistical set, and you're like, it's ready to let this strategy do some hunting. How would you import it into the brokerage interface? And it's very simple. You can see I've already got 3 strategies preloaded into this specific tab, which is my strategies tab. And by the way, we've structured this client to where you can trade in tab fashion if you like to do tabs, or if you like to have free floating windows, we can spawn those as well. So if I clicked on strategies grid, I would have a free floating window, and I could arrange these accordingly as opposed to the tab system here. So whether you like free floating windows or tabs, you have your choice there. So for example, let's say that this strategy right here, I'll quickly run the odds on it. And let's say once this finishes, I like what I see, I'm comfortable with the stocks coming through, I went back and I've looked at the charts and I know that there aren't any crazy thin stocks coming through here or things with extra large spreads, so forth and so on. I like my data output here. And by the way, since we're on this screen right now, the max buying power that we would have needed, 162, so we could just say, hey, could I, I'm right at the threshold here. So, as I change these, we'll also see our projected annual and monthly returns change. So I'm right on the cusp here. If I want to be on everything on the biggest day, I'd be right at 41,000. So let's say I like this strategy. I want to insert it into the robot. after I've saved it to my cloud just by doing this, all I have to do is right-click here and say Load from Cloud. There's the strategy. Load it up. Add to existing. And here we have it right here. All right. So once we've imported the strategy, we simply right-click and go to Edit Trading Strategy. This is where we set up our trading instructions. And as Brad went over earlier, if we have the time filter already present in our strategy, we don't necessarily have to worry about these sliders. The only time you would have to worry about setting these sliders for a start and end time is if you're not making use of the time of day filter. So moving right along, by default, these boxes will always be checked. Well, maybe not this one right here, but obviously when you load a strategy up, you want to verify these boxes, because if you have multiple strategies, say we're running 2 long strategies that are slightly different but kind of the same, say 15 minutes into the open, 1 long fires for one strategy, and then maybe 10 minutes later, another strategy signals the same symbol. All right. If we have this box checked, or actually this box, send order even when holdings exist for a symbol. The only way that second strategy would add to stock XYZ, if you were already in stock XYZ from a prior strategy, is if we had this box checked. If we don't have it checked, the system would know, hey, he's already in stock XYZ and he doesn't want to add any more. But if you ever want multiple strategies, multiple long strategies or multiple short strategies to actually add to a position, then we would check this box. Now, the top one here is for each and every strategy as well. So if strategy XYZ fires off stock ABC, and then stock ABC repeats itself later on, it's not going to add. It's only going to take the first occurrence of each symbol, which is also the way that the backtester operates. For any given time slice that we backtest, the odds maker is only taking the first occurrence of each symbol. Okay, so also here we have this option. Stop after filling 5 orders from a strategy. A lot of the times you might develop a really strong statistical data set and, it's pumping out quite a few trades. Maybe it's pumping out 50 a day. You don't want to change it up because it ruins it degrades the statistics. So a lot of the times what people do, including myself, is, okay, I don't want to let this thing go crazy and all of a sudden be in 80 positions. But I do want to see if I can get a good result by taking maybe the first 10 trades or 5 trades. And you can do that just by, checking this box, putting in the number of trades that you want to take from that strategy. In this case, it's 5. So as soon as that strategy gained 5 actual fills, it would stop sending orders. Down here, each and every strategy can use a custom route. And, if you wanted to bypass the smart routing that comes default, then you would simply check this button, type in the symbol of the ECN that you wanted to use, and it would direct all of its orders for that specific strategy to that specific ECN. Rebates, people that like to do the liquidity, the addition, this gives them the freedom to select whichever ECN that they would like to use. Okay, the next panel down is just the position sizing. Pretty straightforward here. We can do fixed shares or we can do dollar amounts. Okay, so for not that allows us to play the higher price stocks without maxing out the buying power. So we could easily say, hey, let's do $5,000 worth of every position, and it would adjust the share size accordingly. Moving on to order entry, pretty simple here as well. We're either going to use limits or our good friend, the market. Now, we all know the pits and the problems that we can run into using market. And of course, that's also going to depend on the type of animal that you're hunting. If we've done our due diligence and built a solid strategy and reviewed it, and we know that we're not going to, hopefully experience any large spread stocks, but even a liquid stock can open up for a short amount of time. So, market is market. a lot of people, including myself, like to use a limit plus a delta so that we have a very good chance of getting our fill, but we're not going to, get extended to the upside and eat a big spread and, turn a potential winning trade into a considerable loser. So what we can do is this. Let's say I want to use limits, but I don't want to just bid at the bid because I'll never get filled. I don't even want to use, even if I go a penny inside, there's a good chance the market's just going to move. I'm not going to get my fill. So anytime we're dealing with statistical data sets here, the back test is assuming, the back test always gets its fill. So, the way that we can do this and try to minimize the gouging with markets is, say, limit with a delta of, say, if I went -10. Notice we've added these little notes here. Plus is outside the market, negative is inside the market. So with a setting of this, -0.10 with a limit, then I would simply, the machine would simply look at the signal price and add 10 cents to it. So we would go inside by 10 cents. Hopefully, more than likely, we're going to cross up the offer and get our fill, or become the high bid and potentially get our fill. So, a lot of times, people that play convergence to the mean type plays, maybe, if it's a stock running up severely and they want to short it, maybe they'll send a signal to say, throw my offer 15, 20 cents above the current offer. So then once the move occurs, they get their fill, so forth and so on. But the main takeaway here is negative is inside and positive is outside of the spread. Stop losses. We can do the same thing. We can say, hey, this thing moves against me $1, plug me out. We can also do percentage as well. Same way with the profit targets, percentage or dollar. If you are using the robot in the black box format, as soon as you get a fill, these stop losses and profit targets will automatically be inserted as well, very quickly. The trailing stop aspect of the robotic client right now is deactivated. We ran into a couple of little bugs, and we're working on getting those hashed out. But for all intents and purposes right now, trailing stop is, in essence, out of order, hopefully to return sooner than later. The timed exits, this is going to look very similar to, the Oddsmaker slider, just as this whole panel does. So timed exits, we can say minutes after entry, just like the Oddsmaker when we're running the scan, or a designated time. Just like the profit targets and the stop losses, as soon as that fill is, as soon as the stock is filled, profit targets, stop losses, and a timed exit will appear as well. So that pretty much gets us, this is pretty straightforward, pretty simple stuff. It's the easiest thing you're going to run into when you're dealing with our software. The more intensive work is obviously with the scanning. So, this gets us through how to set up the trade instructions. At this point, Brad, should we turn it over to question and answer, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll turn it back to Sean for some question and answer. Thanks very much, Jamie.
My pleasure.
You can contact us at info@trade-ideas.com, one of the best ways to get support. But certainly if you have any questions right now, let's take them.
Thanks, Brad and Jamie. So we have a few questions. The first is the commission in the Oddsmaker by value for the full trade, considering the buy and sell, or is it just for one end of that?
It's for both sides of that.
Okay.
Right, just like the slippage adds to the entry and the exit, correct, Brad?
That's right.
And then another question, is it possible to configure a swing trading strategy in the Brokerage Plus strategy configuration, say with exit of RSI less than 3 days later? Can the strategy software remember the trade and then exit on the third day? Or is it just an entry?
Yeah, it's just, I do not think so. I don't know if I fully understand the question, and maybe that would be a good one to reach out and we can have a discussion on. So again, info@trade-ideas.com. Sounds pretty specific.
Yeah, great point by Brad, guys. If anyone has any questions, you can either email Lightspeed or info@TradeIdeas, and we'd be happy to help. Let me see if there's any other questions that are coming across. I don't see any, but again, feel free to contact us if you do have any questions that come up. One question just came through about window-specific filters. Are they and related phrases?
All or none on the filters.
All or none.
Yeah, every filter needs to be satisfied.
Right. So the filters are all or none, right? And then once the filter set has been satisfied, once the selected alert triggers on a stock where the filter has been where the filters have been satisfied, then that's when the symbol is issued across the alert window.
And the alerts work with or, the filters work with and.
Okay. That's one more question, and I think that is going to wrap it up. How do you use the formulas in the strategy window for instant entry order? I trade only one stock, and the filters. Oh, that's a different question. I don't get that question either.
Right. Just since we heard the thing about I only trade one stock, we haven't even. That's a whole nother game right there. Is back testing single symbols. You can uncover a wealth of information just attacking one single symbol. You could have a strategy that just trades one symbol. So in any case, also just keep in mind that anybody that would like a one-on-one training session to go over these things that we're talking about in more detail, they can always reach out to me at jhodge@trade-ideas.com to set that up.
That's great. All right. So I think that brings us to a close today. Thank you again, Brad and Jamie, for a great presentation. This will be posted on our website for further reference if you ever need to reference it at a future date. It should be posted tomorrow. So if you have any questions, either contact Brad, Jamie, or myself, or reference the webinar online. Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's webinar, and have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.